Unless you guys have any other final thoughts, I want to move into Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. So one thing that we like to do is a segment called Housewives in a Hurry, where you've got 20 seconds to identify the things that stand out in this episode. So don't worry about trying to recap things chronologically. Just try to get through the core things that stand out to you. And I'm going to start your timer right now.
All right, ladies go to Spain. They all bring glam. That's the first for Garcelle. Sutton brings a man in a box. The house that they're staying in is haunted, and Crystal might be a liar.
Great.
Did I do that in 6 seconds?
Oh, there we go.
Okay. I thought
I did. Yeah, excellent recap. I found that there were some like really interesting motifs in this, but I'm curious what you guys thought, if you had anything that stood out in terms of how this story was told.
I kind of felt like this episode was one of those where nothing really happens until more so the second half. And I think it really centered mostly and focused on the Annemarie and Crystal of it all. And I don't know about you guys, and I find this kind of interesting, or it's the first thing that came to my mind when, Crystal sort of being called out by Annemarie. Lucy Apple Juicy sort of came to mind here because Crystal's being called out and no one seems shocked that Crystal may have said these things. Do you know what I'm saying? And that was the same thing in the Lucy Apple Juicy situation where the idea that Lisa might have gone to the press, everyone just sort of felt like, yeah, that's probably what happened. So I just found that sort of interesting and an interesting theme as well, because it's also like, not only did they think she said that, yeah, that sounds like something Crystal would say, they didn't seem to care. They all seemed to go to bed fine and it didn't seem to bother them that much. They almost wanted her to be like, shut the fuck up. Like, we're moving on, so that was interesting to me.
Yeah, I also keyed in on this. I feel like I like that there was a lot of different like perspectives on this in like both like in terms of the spectrum of whether this is something she actually said or not, or kind of perpendicular to that, whether that's something she actually believes or not. And one of the things that I identified as kind of the core like theme and motif of this episode was this idea of like unfinished business. And I loved that we used like ghosts as a mechanism in here, because I think that ghost stories are always about like unfinished business. And when I was thinking about this, it kind of brought to mind one of the most famous ghosts, King Hamlet, which is a ghost that is like an actual like manifestation of lingering pain. Like it's kind of like this symbol of this pain that is experienced by Hamlet and unrest under the surface, which is something that we've kind of like built up to this season so far on Beverly Hills. Like we saw like some resolution with them, being fine at this wine tasting event that they had. And we got some resolution between Sutton and Annemarie before all of a sudden all of that like rears its ugly head again at this dinner. And I feel like with Crystal as well, she's got this history of conflict with all the women. And a lot of that comes back to this idea that Crystal thinks she's better than everyone. And there was all these perspectives on whether or not that's true, which is like similar to the perspectives that you see within Hamlet, where, some people think that it's just a hallucination, whereas others see it. And some think that it's, some think that the ghost is actually like a divine presence that is like a symbol of the unrest within the court, and others think that it is actually the embodiment of, King Hamlet. And so I just really found that there was like some interesting parallels there, which I don't know how much of that is intentional or not, but anytime like a theme comes to mind and you get like a little bit of overlap there, I find that it's really interesting to see where those parallels exist. And like, I mean, Crystal's husband, Rob Minkoff, directed Lion King, which is famously an adaptation of Hamlet. So, there's that connection there too.
Totally. And we also see like the theme of resentment here, right? Like you just feel it in the bones of these women just at different times. And like you see Dorit sort of talking about Crystal's marriage, calling her a child bride. And while she was doing that, we were working. And at that point, she hasn't even said, at this point, Crystal has said, I have not said that. And in a conversation, I believe that happens after Dorit's confessional, or in the way that we see it, she says to, I forget who she's talking to, I think Erika, she says, no, I don't think Crystal said that. So if you don't think Crystal said that, but then you seem very resentful of the fact that she got married young, and especially at a time when you have openly admitted you're having relationship issues, right? So you definitely see that resentment there. You see it between Annemarie and Crystal. I feel like I'm starting to feel it between Dorit and Kyle, because like there's these underhanded comments about like the kind of clothes that Kyle has brought. And then she makes that comment to the camera, like, oh, is she wearing these clothes to like try to land a new husband? Like when Kyle sees that, which I'm sure she has now, I think they're done. Right. So I feel like there's just a lot of, I think that's why we have an explosion, right? Because there's just like a lot of pent up tension and resentment that I feel here.
Yeah, totally. So let's get into our highlights from this episode. Dana, what were your highlights here?
For me, Erika being disappointed in the women's reaction to her win. So from what I understand, the earrings were taken from her, and they were $750,000 each, I think. I think they may have been 1.2. I don't know. The number keeps changing. They get taken from her as part of what's going on with Tom, and then she appeals it. That's confusing to me in general, like why you even went through that process anyways. But okay, she appeals it, and then the court says, we can't prove that the money used to buy these earrings were bought with that client money, so we're going to put this in a different court. And she considers that a win. I sort of side with Garcelle, because she sort of makes the point right after I thought it. And she says, like, why do we even want the earrings, and why didn't you just give them up to begin with, right? So, the women aren't, and she's thinking about it in her mind a different way than they're thinking about it, right? So, like, the highlight to me is that she's thinking, like, okay, you guys were so passionate about, like, what was going on with me last year, but then I have this win and you guys don't care? No, it's not that they don't care, and I think that they have been very... they have stuck by you through like a lot of shitty things that you have said, just being like, I don't care about victims, basically. But you didn't buy the earrings yourself. Sorry, to the best of my recollection. So why do you even want earrings that Tom had bought you anyway, right? And even if they weren't bought with those gains, don't you just want to help victims in general? Like, no one's going to blame you if... No one's going to take that as an admission of guilt, if you gave up those earrings. And the fact that you're continuing to go through appeals through courts to get a pair of earrings back seems very trivial to me in the very grand scheme of what she's been through, and it actually makes you seem more vapid and shallow. Like, I was really loving her this season until I saw that. I'm like, give it up. The fact that you're not giving it up means that you maybe haven't changed. I don't know. That's my highlight.
Yeah. I feel like Erika wants vindication, right? That's like the whole thing that she wants. And she wants to, be vindicated. And she sees this as like some sort of official recognition that she is like not responsible. And so she is expecting there to be like a parade held, being like, oh, you're right. I guess like you didn't know. But, when she doesn't get that, she's really disappointed. Like, you can see that she can't wait to give this news. She does it first thing in the morning when everyone gets up and everyone's talking about something else, and she changes the subject, and no one cares. And you're right, she's thinking about this in a completely different way than anyone else is.
Right. And that's just because she just has a different viewpoint. But that's just who she is. I mean, look at the very first episode where she's like, empathy. How do you get that? Like, wow.
Yeah, totally.
If we're starting there, I don't know how we're ever going to get to the even place. That is just, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I thought that earlier in this episode that we saw some like real growth from her, because when we got that scene in the Sprinter van where they're playing Sutton's game, like Who Knows Me the Best, and Erika actually wins. She like knows the name of her cats or her son, like what the third car is.
Wait a minute,
it's
though.
like, oh,
when did Sutton get a third kid? Like, when did that happen? Was it just me?
Yeah.
That's an unknown child, right? Okay.
Yeah,
just wanted to make sure that wasn't just me. I'm like, your middle child. Do you know how many of these housewives have secret children that we don't know about? Lala has a brother that no one knows about, and she won't name him. It's just bizarre to me. Yeah. Meredith has 3 kids.
Yeah, but how is it that Erika knew what like Sutton's third car was, but didn't realize that Tom was embezzling all this money? I don't know. That's suspect to me.
Yeah, it's funny because I've never obviously been in a situation like that, but there's just so many of these that you see now, right? Like, or people even say the same to Lala, right? Like, how did you not see it? And maybe just women have their blinders on when they see a situation that seems good at the outset. And I mean, I've definitely been in situations where you kind of ignore the bad and you keep remembering the good, or you keep trying to think about the good because you will hope it goes back to that. I mean, there's always a good stage in a relationship. There's got to be something that got you married, right? So maybe they're just like really trying to focus on that and really put blinders to everything else. But it seems much more common than we think. Like I'm hearing this a lot, like women just constantly saying like, I didn't realize what I was in until I was out of it.
Yeah, totally. Did you have any other highlights from Beverly Hills?
What are little people? Like specifically,
that's a
are they also ghosts? Or are they just smaller ghosts, child ghosts, Village of the Damned? Like what are the little
people? I don't know. They definitely like were threatening seeming from the perspective that we got. So
yeah, I love that they did set this in like a haunted house. I don't think we've ever had something like that before, and like so many people are afraid of things like that. So it was a fun, it was fun, but it's not. I feel bad for the women a little bit. Usually they get these nice fancy vacations like Mexico and this and that, and they got like a haunted house. But cool for the viewer for sure.
Sandy, what were your highlights?
Definitely the Erika stuff that you guys mentioned, and just especially looking back at the flashbacks of her, she really looked unwell last season compared to where she is now. So it was interesting to get a taste of that. And I guess the meds are working and the therapy is working. But as you said, it was interesting to see that she still really is seeing it in the same way, but maybe just tamping down some of that chaoticness that was getting out. So that's interesting and TBD.
You know, with that being said, therapy is a process, right? So I don't know how long she's been in it, but, you know, we're all working on ourselves always.
Oh, for sure.
Nobody's ever perfect. So good for her for doing the work. I'll give her that for sure.
You're not going to just become changed or whatever. Like, it's exactly. She went through a traumatic thing. I mean, that was no one would want to deal with that. So I can hardly imagine. And I think the earrings mean something to her a little more than just a pair of earrings. So we have to accept that they mean a lot to her. They're symbolic.
Oh, you know what? Maybe they are, right? Like that didn't even occur to me. Maybe there is something symbolic about them or something sentimental about them. Or maybe that was like a really important day between her and Tom, a really, really good day. And that's the one memory she wants to cherish. I mean, it could be anything. I'm curious to know what it is.
Yeah, I could.
Or maybe they're just like a symbol of her responsibility that she wants to make sure that she like keeps, like the fact that she, you know, whether she's culpable in this or not, and like whether she could have done anything or not, like she wants to, like she's lost everything and she's just trying to grasp back like some piece of like her autonomy that she feels like she has lost, and this person that she used to be. So I think that like even if they weren't necessarily significant prior to this, they have definitely like become a symbol for her and one that she is really desperate to keep.
Totally. Exactly. Otherwise, I noted when they had the little tag saying like the ladies Airbnb, I was like, oh, they're just like doing a casual Airbnb situation. How low key of them. But when we were introduced to the Airbnb host who let them know their dinner would be served soon, I got the impression it was a little bit more of a upgrade than the things I've experienced at Airbnb. So anyways, all good. I also loved the ghosts and the beautiful old home. Were kind of weird, modern / old, like kind of discombobulating as far as, because it was, I'm in like a Tudor England period these days and thinking a lot about old homes. And so I was like, this feels weird. I don't know, maybe the little people are confused too when they see the half modern decor, but I would have asked more about what they were if I were there. I'd be like, tell me exactly what little people are, please.
Yeah, like
yeah. I thought that this location was interesting in how it was presented too. I feel like in a lot of cases when we see the places that they're staying on these trips, we get a bit more of a mental mapping of it when it's shown. But here it was, like you said, it was very disconnected and like hard to place. It felt almost like a labyrinth and trying to get a sense of the space. And I think that was intentionally adding to the sort of confusion and spookiness of this atmosphere.
Totally. And even the women couldn't find their own rooms.
Yeah, exactly. Sandy, did you have any other highlights?
Oh yeah, just a small mention that Garcelle called out Sutton's hat as terrible and then asked who made it. And I was wondering if that is good or bad for the designer of this hat.
I mean, any mention is like good press, right?
She kind of mumbled the answer.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
so
I guess
funny.
we'll see how it looks when she wears it. Oh, I guess we do get the beginning of that day. Was she wearing it at the beginning of the day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was unremarkable to me, the hat when she was wearing it.
It had holes in it, sort of. I don't know. Yeah. I don't have strong opinions on hats. And then I want to also give a shout out to the Ashes storyline because I love that. It fit with the sort of eeriness of the vibe of this episode and was also kind of comic relief at the same time with the Ziploc angle. So I enjoyed that and always enjoy Sutton.
So Sutton. Yeah, that's so Sutton to bring a man in a Ziploc bag. That's of course, right? Of course.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that was great. I also I found that Avi, he's just been like a really interesting side character. This dynamic that him and Sutton have is really interesting. And we got some moments earlier this season where she wasn't exactly treating him the best, but they seem to have this very like kind of like catty relationship back and forth, and they seem to like thrive in that dynamic. So I like that, and I like that we got him like holding up the Ziploc bag wearing gloves like it was CSI, and really funny storyline.
It was really spin-off. Yes, I was gonna say I would watch a spin-off with Sutton and her friends because she's just so lovely. And yeah, it was, the Ashes were set up so well where like you didn't know if this guy was alive or how is she bringing him? Is it his son? So it was really cute. And also, how cool is Sutton? She was a dancer. Like, what a cool life. She's like legit awesome. Like, she's just the best. Just love her.
I wonder if we actually missed out. This was my first thought when I was watching that. Like, did we miss out on so much of Sutton's like backstory because she started as a friend of, because we don't get a lot of your backstory when you're a friend of. You just come in and out.
True.
We don't get a lot of your family. And so then she becomes a full-time cast member, and it's kind of too late to start like asking her questions about her past, right? So I was just sort of like, I didn't know she was a dancer. I didn't know she did this. Or we're learning. You have a third child? Didn't know that. Right? Learning a lot about you this season.
Yeah, I think one thing that this revelation that she was a dancer really what was interesting to me about it was the fact that we already know that like Sutton has come from like the South, and she has this like she comes from a place where there's this like strong social code, and to learn that she was like a dancer in New York, that is kind of like defying that a little bit, but that's a separate that's a separate social structure that has its own very like rigid code. And to see this personality that Sutton has, where she is like instinctually trying to like break out of those social codes and be like a little bit of a rebel, but she still has like insecurities that are defined by it. Like we hear her talk about how this Mercer guy was one of the people that appreciated that she was like quirky and never called her weird. And we can see through how she conducts herself in like the dating scene that she's insecure about seeming like she's weird. And she's got this, like, she does to a degree embrace her like quirkiness, but it's also like a little bit of a insecure relationship that she's got with it. So a lovely piece of color to Sutton's character, I think.
And like, how can you not? I mean, personally, and I've sort of been through the same situation as her, when you're going on a date one after date one after date one, you're like, is it my personality? Right? So when you have someone in your life who just like loves you for who you are, like, wow, that's such a blessing when you feel like such an outcast, you know, and to even just call her quirky. Other people call her quirky, like pretty often, I think, on the cast, right? Like, so I don't think it's unbeknownst to her that people think she's a little off color, a little off, right? So, you know, for her to find someone who, but at the same time, and I don't want to go there, you guys, but I might just go there a smidge. Like, maybe I just watched too many documentaries, but the way she described their relationship to me just seemed nice, but like odd. This is an adult man who, you know, was inviting this young dancer over to his home and cooking for her, and she has his ashes. Like, that just seems like a bit. And, you know, in that, you know, you talk about, you know, the New York dance scene having its own social structure. Well, there's also social structures in like sports, right? Like, you watch documentaries about like cheer and the Dr. Larry Nassar stuff in gymnastics, right? There's that relationship between I guess like the mentor, the mentee, or the trainer, the whatever, and it can sometimes cross a line. And it didn't seem like it. She seemed so passionate about him in such a positive way. It just made me feel a little icky.
Yeah, anytime that you see that sort of like power structure, I mean, we didn't get a ton of context on that, and you know, it's hard to like really say. But when a professional relationship where there is like a power dynamic gets to a point where it is so personal that you have their ashes, it definitely, like, you question how that line from professional to personal was crossed for sure.
Or if, you know, it just made me feel a bit weird, but she seems to only have pleasant memories of him, so that's good. You know, like, I felt like I was walking into a documentary that was about to go south. That started beautifully and then turned into like, and then she was murdered by him or something to that effect. Sorry to bring the mood down.
No. Do you guys have any other highlights from Beverly Hills?
So my highlight is actually the very, very end, because sort of Crystal is at Annemarie's mercy because she's car sick and her veins are coming out and her hands are swelling up and she doesn't know what's wrong with her. And the only medical professional in the room is, hello, Annemarie. So I am so excited to see what comes of that. That is such a highlight to me.
Yeah, and I love that we have, like, that this took place at the top of this mountain, that they're actually, like, physically climbing, that there's all this, like, resistance between this, to build this relationship between Crystal and Annemarie, and that we see an actual, like, climbing of a mountain and having it come to a head at the top is just a really interesting, like, physical metaphor, I think.
Totally. They're literally, there's no help. They're on the top of a mountain, right? It's awesome. You can't write better TV.
I think we covered most of what I wanted to talk about. We've got a little space to come back and circle around. Was there any sort of weird little pieces that you saw that you wanted to call out?
I guess I just want to say that Crystal did probably say all of those things. I guess we didn't really touch on the fact that there were those flashbacks of her making similar comments, just being like, oh, these words are too big for you guys. So I definitely think that she said those things. It would be weird. It's sort of funny to watch the women sort of just go from like, oh, Annemarie's so annoying, to be like, well, she wouldn't make up something like that completely. So, you know, they're sort of siding with somebody they barely know because they know Crystal would say something like that. So, Crystal, why are you saying stuff like that? That's don't do that. That's really rude, especially to a complete stranger. Like, why would
even Crystal did not sound at all convincing or convinced when she said, I did not say that. You know, I wouldn't say.
And I've actually taken courses on like interviewing and how to tell if people are lying and stuff. And when you ask someone a question and they come back at you with a question, especially if that question is, why would I do that? I don't know. I'm just asking you if you did it, right? Like, I'm not, that's actually a tell of a lie that that police use. So just letting you know. Yeah. So I definitely think she's lying, but the women don't really seem to care that.
Yeah, this actually reminds me of, I guess, last week's episode of Real Housewives of Miami, where Adriana came clean that she was the one behind at the Anna ambush, and everyone was still mad at Nicole anyways. Like, the fact that there was so many people in the group was like, well, we don't care that Crystal said that, because of course she said that, because she feels that way, and we all come to terms with it.
Yeah, it's funny what they decide they can come to terms with and what they decide they can't, and that takes us back to Salt Lake, right? Because it's like, what can you tolerate and what can't you? Because people keep saying, totally. Did we tolerate all these? You tolerated Jen Shaw and all her crimes. It's like, not really. Like, so it's, to each their own, I guess. We each have our breaking point, our limits with people, or what we need in people, right? I mean, and there's also the level of friendships that you're at. I mean, I have a lot higher expectations for like my best friend than I do for like more of an acquaintance, right? So
yeah, totally. Sandy, did you have anything weird that you wanted to call out?
I don't think so.
Cool. Yeah, I think we covered most of what I wanted to say. I do want to call out a couple more like little paranormal things. I think I liked that we got this moment of Erika doing her vocal exercises, and it was like, oh, she needs an exorcism. That was really fun. And also Storm. I am convinced that he's a ghost. I am waiting for next episode where they ask about Storm. They're like, and someone's like, Storm died 10 years ago.
That is amazing. Nice. I would love that, and I wouldn't put it past the Housewives. I didn't even think of that.
That reminds me on the paranormal, Erika can smell spirits. Can we please know more? Like, why are there all these threads of paranormal that little people, who knows, smell spirit? What kind of smells? What do you smell right now? Like, why are they not giving us more of that?
Yeah, I didn't know she dabbled in that sort of thing. I mean, she definitely has talked about that. Wasn't she say she was like a general in a previous, or she was a small boy in a previous life, or something like that?
Like a Roman boy or like a something? I don't know.
But I didn't know that she considers herself sort of in tune with the other world. So, but yeah, I want to know what you smell. Is it burnt toast? Do you guys get that joke because you're Canadian? No, the heritage.
Yes.
Do you remember this?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
That's what came to mind.
Put up the clip, Craig.
What is it, Mrs. Gold?
Burnt toast. Dr. Penfield, I can smell burnt toast.
Yeah. I smell burnt toast. But that's totally bizarre, but I'm so into that. Like, and a lot of the women are too, like, into a little bit of the paranormal. So it's actually funny that like Kyle, for example, is so into psychics in all those different forms, but like these women are terrified of this house, right? Yeah. They want to speak to like their dead mother, but not, I guess, dead strangers. Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
When you say it is
different. Yeah. If Erika was a Roman boy, how come she thought that the 14th century was Jesus times?
Awkward.
And everyone's just dead silent, just being like,
Quite.
And Garcelle was talking about, like what it's like in Haiti, and how like you'll be told all these sort of like ghost stories, and somebody dies, but they come back as a ghost, and all of these things, and it's just she's talking about like voodoo and all of that. So and that all of that stuff starts to get brings up in Potomac, and it just gets like really messy over there. But yeah, this was definitely, I love how they sort of integrated each of the women into a little bit of the paranormal activity.
Yeah, totally. Before we wrap things up, I want to go through and everyone has a chance to pick their all-stars from this episode. We'll start with you, Dana. Who are your picks?
I decided just Sutton, because this is sort of her trip. She sort of organized everything. She brought a man in a box. She, organized the rooms. I just sort of like how she led everything, and she was sort of just the center of the conversation and just sort of brought the group together. And she also brought the drama. I think she did her job this episode. Really loved it. 100%. Sutton.
Yeah, awesome.
No notes.
How about you, Sandy?
I didn't mind Erika in this episode. She had a few little moments, and even her sort of strange expectations at the end was pretty interesting. So I'm going to give her a star.
Awesome. So I've got 3 picks right now, and it was hard to narrow them down to just 3.
He's like, all of them.
But Sutton, for sure, I think that she was excellent. Just always dynamic, and we got more about her character here. Mm-hmm. So I found that was really compelling. Again, also bringing someone's remains on this trip was really good. Mm-hmm. I think that Crystal is one of the standouts for me this season. I think that we're getting just a really compelling picture of her that we haven't got up until this season. So to see her kind of grappling with when and where and how and if she should be standing up for herself in certain situations. And it was a bit of a contrast between the story that we have been seeing with her brother, and how, she has maybe asserted herself too much. Whereas, previously in the social situations that she's in on this show, she hasn't done that enough. And she's kind of trying to find a balance here. So I'm just really liking how this is evolving, and she's a standout for me. And, you know, I think like as annoying and awful as Annemarie is, she's like working hard. I think she's probably going to fizzle out and be a one and done housewife, but it is really interesting to have someone in here agitating and really like playing so hard that it is completely unsustainable. This is something I think that we also saw with like Noella when she was on Real Housewives of Orange County. She played the game so hard that it was like not sustainable to like come back for another season. And that kind of is what you'd mentioned about Monica, how she like played herself into, or she found herself in a position where she couldn't come back from. In Monica's case, I don't think it was because she was playing the game so hard, but in Anne-Marie's case, it definitely is. Like she's an agent of chaos. So I'm appreciating that.
Can I give her a little kudos or a little defense just for the record? And I mentioned this on my podcast today as well. So I don't know if you guys remember Rachel Lindsay. She was the first African American bachelorette. So she is on a podcast called the Morally Corrupt Podcast on the Ringer reality feed, and she's actually good friends with Annemarie. And so she actually said a little bit about it on the podcast, and she's like, she believes that there was more filming with Annemarie's family that was probably cut out because there's been allegations against Annemarie's husband.
Marcellus,
and just there was other things. And it actually wasn't as focused on the esophagus as much as it seemed to be. And Rachel Lindsay is currently going through a divorce, and apparently Annemarie has just really been there for her and really reaching out to her and been a really, really good friend. So I just want to say that for the record. You know, we see what we see, right? We always do. We see these snippets and these clips, and I'm actually kind of worried this woman is going to lose her job, to be quite frank, with how much people are getting like upset, right, about this stupid thing. So, you know, I worry for her a little bit and for her family and that kind of stuff, because at the end of the day, we have to remember she isn't a character. She is a real person. And so, you know, if she isn't being a good friend to Sutton, but she's being good friends to her real friends, okay. Let's let the esophagus
fair.
Go. You know, like, let's move on, please.
Put the esophagus in the sarcophagus.
Nice.